Already Loaded for Life here, bringing us a brand new video, and today we got the Ygopro Archetype Analysis. Been wanting to do this for quite a while, and now we are finally doing it, so holy crap. I hope you guys are ready, because Ygopro was probably my most hyped deck going into 2020, purely because they are DDD Cyberse, basically, you know, and how they work and function, in that they are capable of using almost every single summoning mechanic out there. The only exception is Pendulum, which is funny because DDD has everything except for Ritual, which Ygopro actually do have. They're also like the polar opposite of DDD, whereas DDD is a very controlled deck which can occasionally do OTKs and stuff. This deck is a very OTK based deck with next to no control options. At least if you're playing Pure. If you're not playing Pure and you focus instead on like being able to make the more generic links and stuff like that, and make full use of the access of like everything that's not just their stuff, then, well, yeah, you got a lot more extra options and everything. But, however, we're mainly focused on the archetype itself, so if you look at the archetype itself, there's basically no negation options. The deck is incredibly consistent, even just looking at its own, like, stuff, like, in general. They have so many search cards, quite a few, like, at least one draw card, and are just incredibly good on that end. They are, to an extent, reliant on their field spell, although there really should be an asterisk there, because it's not just their field spell, but any sort of outside special summoning effect. If you don't have either an Ygopro or a Cyberse that can special summon itself, or a spell trap or whatever to be able to special summon more dudes, you kind of tend to slow down a bit. This deck, whenever it pops off like crazy. But if you can't get that pop-off going, it can be a bit slow. So you really got to be able to get those ways of getting more monsters on board very, very easily. And as I mentioned, this deck is capable of several different playstyles. You can build it to go first. You can build it to go second. That's actually what the deck really leans towards too. You can focus on pure builds. You can focus on being able to make use of like everything out there, which is probably the better way to go about it. But I digress. It all makes for a really fun rogue near tier deck. Like if this deck gets just like two more good cards, this deck could easily be a meta deck. But as it stands right now, it's not, and we're going to go over the reasons why. First up, let's cover probably the worst card in the archetype. Don Ygopro at Ygopro. He's literally a Kribo with like a toupee on his head. But I digress. So, he's 300 attack, 0 defense, level 1 Dark Cyberse effect monster. During damage calculation, if your Ygopro monster is attacked as a quick effect, you can discard this card and you take no damage from that battle. That's all he does in that regard. He does not protect your monster. Why does he not do that? But anyways, when an Ygopro monster effect or spell or trap card or effect is activated that would inflicts damage to your opponent, even during a damage step, which is pretty cool, you can banish this card from your graveyard, double that damage inflicted to your opponent. This is a interesting card, okay? He has very lackluster protection. If he had the ability to protect a monster that is battling as well, on top of also reducing the damage to 0, that would be wonderful. But no, he doesn't do that. You literally just make the damage 0, and that is it. Your monster still gets killed, which is not very good protection at all, which is just not wonderful. And then it also has a weird burn effect. Now, this is a weird thing with a certain segment of Ygopro cards, like I want to say like a good 3 or 4 of them, where they strangely have burn effects. It kind of goes hand in hand with the OTK strategy of this archetype at the end of the day, but however, the burn isn't really the like main appeal of the deck. It's like a cherry on top, but it's not like the main thing you're focusing on with the archetype. So it ends up being just an okay card that doesn't get played in most variants. If you really want to focus on that burn aspect, I can see why somebody would want to play it, but however, not focusing on the burn aspect, which is what every single version of the good like builds are, they do not focus on the burn aspect, is not worth playing. Next up, we got Hiyari Agnister, which is a monster that is definitely worth playing. It's a level 1 water Cyberse effect monster, 300 attack, 400 defense. If you control an Agnister monster, you can spell summon this card from your hand. You contribute one other Cyberse monster, add a level 5 or higher Agnister monster from your deck to your hand. And if you do this, this card becomes level 4 until the end of this turn. Then, if you tributed a Link monster to activate this effect, you can add one Eyes Ritual from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Hiyari at Agnister once per turn. And this card, it really goes to show off what this deck wants to do. Truly, just kind of ignoring Donrebo, which is just such an outlier from the rest of the archetype. This thing is an easy to special summon card, has okay stats, becomes level 4 through its own effect, is effectively a double search, and enables you to instantly set up for a ritual summon, which is really, really good. It can search out the other level 5 or highers, which is really nice as well, which there wasn't any until we got the ritual, and then we got 2 random level 8s. I get it that they were like using like the final duel and everything, but like they're still really random, especially if you look at the rest of this archetype. There's like no reference to anything that's level 4 or higher, except for in Hiyari, which is kind of hilarious. So due to this, Hiyari, as well as also the next one that we'll talk about, their number that like you play of is totally dependent on how many of the cards that work in conjunction with them that you want to play. Like for instance, if you want to play the ritual, Hiyari you might want to consider playing more copies of. While if you aren't playing the ritual, you probably don't need to consider playing Hiyari as much. Likewise, if you're not playing any of the level 5 or higher Agnisters, some people don't even play Hiyari, they just focus on the next dude, which we'll get to here in a second. So I can't really give a good number on how many you should play. Personally, since I really like focusing on being able to do everything, I play 2. As well as also Doshin Agnister, who is a level 1 Earth Cyberse effect monster, 100 attack, 800 defense. If you control an Agnister monster, you can spell summon this card from your hand. Hey, that sounds familiar. And you can target one Cyberse Link monster in your graveyard, return it to the extract, and if you do, add an I Love Fusion from your deck to your hand. So, as you can see, these two are kind of meant to work together. Hiyari will tribute a Link to be able to search out the ritual spell and the ritual, and then Doshin will be able to return the Link to your extract to be able to search out I Love Fusion. I really want to keep calling it I Love Fusion, which is what it was called in Japan. It goes with like how Yugo or You it kind of goes with fusion. It's weird how basically the Japanese word for fusion is Yugo, so it's a pun. Everything with this archetype is a pun, by the way. I love it and I hate it. So anyway, Doshin Agnister is a objectively better card than Hiyari for the most part. It recurs a monster and gets you the fusion spell, which the fusion spell is stupid good. Like, I love it, but it's really not worth playing more than one of, if I'm being completely honest. Now, in regards to Doshin, though, because he has the effect to be able to just recycle stuff, and also is the objectively better one between him and Hiyari. Typically speaking, I've seen people play more Doshin than Hiyari, or the same number of each, because they are easy to special summon monsters, they are easy to search, and they both have really good effects, and they tie into each other with what they want to do. Not to mention, with how much recursion this deck has, Doshin is just another easy way of recurring your stuff. Moving on, we got the Searcher Achichi Agnister. He's a level 2 Fire Cyberse effect monster, 800 attack, 800 defense. If he's normal or spell summon, you can add a level 4 or lower Agnister from your deck to your hand, except a copy of himself. Again, there's no reference to level 5 or highers. I just wish it said Agnister monster, but hey, whatever. Just getting search out any of your level 4 or lowers is wonderful. At the start of the damage step, this is so stupid. When your Cyberse monster battles, you can banish this card from your graveyard to destroy that monster you control. You can only use each effect of Achichi Agnister once per turn. Am I the only one who has instantly clicked yes when Ygopro or YgoPro asks you to do that, and you click yes thinking it's something else, and then, oh no, I just killed my own monster with Achichi? It sucks. Achichi has a wonderful summon effect, being the Stratos of the archetype, and due to that right there, you play 3, because he is a searcher. Well, one of the searchers. And so you need him to be able to get the deck rolling. But the weird self-destruction effect, like, I get it, it goes with the Fire Link, you know, like, all the links, I mean, So it goes with the fire extract monster. So like all the little Agnisters in the main deck have a corresponding boss monster, either in the extract or the ritual for Hiyari. And like Achichi is supposed to be able to make use of Fire Phoenix's effect, but like it's just not great. I can't think of any time where you'd actually want to do this for the most part. I mean, it's a cool idea for certain things, but like it's really, really not necessary. I mean, you're never gonna self-destruct your own stuff unless you really want that freaking like effect of Fire Phoenix, which I think it just can revive itself off the top of my head. We'll get to it when we get to it. Next up, we got Buru. God, these names. Ignister. Cyberse Tuner Effect Monster. If this card is normal or spell summoned, you can send one Ignister monster from your deck to the graveyard. If it is sent to the graveyard as material for the synchro summon of a Cyberse monster, you can target one monster in your graveyard that was used for that synchro summon, except a copy of Bururu. As special summon that monster, you can only use each effect of him once per turn. By the way, he's got 600 attack, 1000 defense, he's a wind, and he's a level 3. This is a wonderfully good tuner for the archetype. While he doesn't do much on his own, he really specializes whenever you got more ways to spell summon dudes from your hand or from graveyard or wherever. And when that happens, you have easy access to very, very fun, good plays. Like, oh my god, dumping a dude into your graveyard and then using Monster Born to bring it back and then just going off like that. On top of that, he brings back a monster whenever you synchro off with him and another dude for a Cyberse. So like, oh, you make this the Agnes or synchro. Cool, I get a monster back, and then, oh, if it's Achichi or something else, you get to use its effective, then, well, on summon, to search or do whatever, whenever it comes to that particular thing. And it can be any monster that you use for that synchro summon. So, like, for instance, if you, like, I don't know, sync off with Lady Debug, you can get her effect if you haven't used it that turn, or something like that. It's a wonderfully good effect for Cyberse decks in general. I just wish that it could send any Cyberse from deck to graveyard. Maybe that'd be a bit too broken, but being able to just dump a dude on summon and then bring back a dude whenever it's synchroed off for whenever it's used for a synchro summon is such a really good effect overall. And it's due to this, I really recommend playing 2 to 3 of them in most builds of the deck. There are some builds that maybe only want to consider playing 1, which I've seen some people tinker around with, but considering how good the Cyberse synchros are between the Agnister one and Quantum Dragon, it's probably something you might want to consider playing 2 of, maybe even 3 of, because he is just that good for the archetype. Moving on, we got Doyon Agnister. These designs of these cards, what the hell? He's got his crest in a spot that makes me question just what Konami was thinking, but I digress. Doyon is a level 4, 400 attack, 1600 defense, Dark Cyberse, with the following effect. If it's normal or special summoned, you can target one Agnister in your graveyard, add it to your hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard as material for the link summon of a Cyberse monster, you can target an Eye spell trap card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only use each effect of Doyon once per turn. This thing is good. Like, just stupid good. I love it. Just being able to add back a dude from graveyard on summon is really great. And then being able to add back a spell or trap card whenever being used for the link summon of a Cyberse is also really great. And the Agnister spell and trap cards are for the most part really good, and I can't wait till we get to talk about them because they are really good and they're the backbone of this archetype. So Doyon, the big thing with him is that the number that you play is totally dependent on how many of the spells and traps and how reliant on the Agnisters you're focusing on. If you're playing a less Agnister heavy deck and more of a just like mash together Cyberse deck, maybe play 1 or 2. But if you're playing a dedicated Agnister deck, I think he's a 3 of. Like, easy, because he just triggers so easily in order to get back your stuff. And it just makes for a great card overall. And getting to recycle your spells is like one of the best things ever for this archetype, because they have some great, amazing spells. And I can't wait till we get to that. Great card overall. Depending on your build, you might want to play 1 to 3. It's really just dependent on the build. Moving on, we got the best boy, Pickery Agnister. He's a light Cyberse for level 4. So 1200 attack, 600 defense. I don't know why, but I was about to say 400 attack, and that would be stupid. Because he's not 400 attack, he's 1200. But I digress. Okay, so if this card is normal or spell summon, you can add one eye spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, and you can target an Agnister you control. Its level becomes 4 until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Pickery once per turn. You play 3. Both effects are stupid good, okay? You get to search out an eye spell or trap card on summon of this thing, and then once per turn you can make another dude level 4, okay? That makes for just amazing plays in general, because you can either go into next C's, you can make synchros better, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Heck, if you target Bururu with Pikaru's effect, you can then make a level 8, which is really good, because you normally can't reach level 8 synchros in this deck very easily. So, overall, between the searching and the just versatility of getting to make anybody level 4, I don't see any reason not to play 3 of this. Next up, we got one of the first of the level 8s, Gachiri Agnister, and this is the better of the level 8s. So, he's a level 8, 0 attack, 3k defense, Earth Cyberse effect monster. The first time each Cyberse monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, each turn it is not. You can only use each of the following effects of Gachiri once per turn. First effect, you can target one Cyberse effect monster you control, negate its effects, and if you do, spell summon this card from your hand. Second effect, if this card is sent from the field or your graveyard, you can target one face-up monster you control. That target is unaffected by your opponent's card effects until the end of your opponent's turn. This is a really interesting monster overall. Like him and the other level 8 Gusari are based on the old proverb of having an impenetrable shield and an unstoppable lance or spear. And Gachiri really embodies the impenetrable shield aspect, in that it is easy to special summon. It protects your monsters while it's on the field. It has a crap ton of defense that's going to be really hard to punch over. And on top of that, you can make one of your dudes unaffected by your opponent's card effects if it's sent to the graveyard, which is really good. Now, does that ever really be relevant? No, because most of the time you're linking them off so you can link off that link for another link. It is kind of silly in that regard, but however, the protection he does provide is really handy. Now, how many should you play, if at all? That's down to player preference. Personally, I really like playing 2, especially since if you do happen to get out 2 of them, which isn't hard to do, you spell summon one through its own effect, and then you bring back the other through the archetypal monster reborn, and then you go and make, Titanic Galaxy or any other rank 8. It provides extra plays into the archetype that it normally wouldn't have, which is really handy, and gives you more of the versatility in the deck that you really want for it. Kind of really puts it more on par with what DDD can do, because DDD makes some crap ton of really good rank 8s, and being able to make those really good rank 8s as well is something that is nice as well. It's not a priority of the deck, but it is a nice little add-on. Now, that being said, Gachiri can also be a very easy side-out card, so I don't know. It's really down to you and what you want to do with the deck, but it is something to consider whenever you are looking at the deck. What is not something you want to consider is Gusari. Gusari, I love his design so much more than I do Gachiri, but good lord, they messed this card up. Okay, so he's a level 8 Earth Cyberse effect monster, 3k attack, 3k defense. When a Link monster is destroyed by battle, you can spell summon this card from your hand. That's his special summoning clause. That's not a good one. And it's mostly that right there that kills this card for me, because if it had a better special summoning clause, he'd actually be somewhat considered worth playing, purely because he's got actual attack power and can help you punch over stuff and go for the OTK. But no, they had to give him the crappy special summoning effect. Anyway, moving on. When your Link monster destroys an opponent's monster in battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that destroyed monster's original attack. When an attack is declared involving a Link monster you control and an opponent's monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard. The attacks of those monsters become 3,000. You can only use each effect of Gusari Agnister once per turn. Okay, so I see what they were trying to do with this deck, with this card. Again, it's supposed to be the Unstoppable Spear or whatever. And it's a very stoppable spear. It's not a good unstoppable spear at all. Okay, again, it has a crappy special summoning effect where you gotta rely on one of your dudes getting run over by battle, and on top of that, it's gotta be a link that gets destroyed. That's not good. You gotta let one of your links get destroyed. That's the only time that really happens is if you're doing a kamikaze move of tie strike, which we will get to here in a little bit, or if, like, I don't know, you messed up and you gotta end your turn, and then, oh, your opponent kills your Dark Templar or your Lingravo, and then you just plop Yusari on the field, and it's like, yeah, and then your opponent just nukes him with something else, or better yet, he gets negated in with, like, a Palusa, and you don't even get to summon him. And then what do you get when he's on the field? You get a once per turn blanket Flame Wingman for your Link monster. Now, if that effect was not once per turn, where like just anytime that any of your links kills a monster in battle, it does burn damage, that would be something maybe to consider, because then you got like even more of an easy OTK. But again, you'd have to find an easier way to get this out of your hand or onto the field, which again would typically require, like, I don't know, using Idle Reborn, or I'm not entirely for sure, but I think the field spell can special summon it. Actually, no, I'm pretty sure the field spell specifies level 4 or lower, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So yeah, Gusari is just not good. And then it has Tie Strike's effect in Graveyard. What the hell? Why does it have... Why did they copy Tie Strike's effect and put it under Gusari? I know it's not like verbatim the same effect, but we already had Tie Strike, which does the same thing as this thing, except it's a spell and has a better Graveyard effect. This isn't a good card. Don't play it. If you really want to play it, it's a decent one of, but it's not. Don't play it. Next up, we got the first of the boss monsters in the ritual. Almost called it a link because blue card. Oh wait, it's not a link. It's got a level. It's a ritual. Water Leviathan at Ignister. He is a level 7 Water Cyberse ritual. Effect monster, 2300 attack, 2k defense. Get used to seeing 2300 because everybody, with the exception of one of the boss monsters, has 2300 attack. It's kind of... It's supposed to be a callback to Playmaker, but, like, seriously. Anyways, you can ritual summon this card with Eyes Ritual. If this card is ritual summoned, you can return all monsters your opponent controls with 2300 or less attack to the hand. This is actually, like, something that's going to trigger a lot more than people think. Because card effect, I mean, monsters typically cap out around 25, and in like terms of like actually like, you know, notable cards that people play. So 2300 is not hard to hit at all with it. Like it can mass bounce so much very easily, which is hilarious when it does happen. Anyways, moving on. Once per turn, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, return all link monsters from your graveyard to the extract, and if you do, change that targeted monster's attack to 0. This is really good. I just wish it was a quick effect. Being able to return all of your link monsters to the graveyard to just drop something to 0 and go for big damage that much easier is a wonderfully mean effect, and I love it. Then its final effect is... You can only use this effect. Oh wait, no, that's applying to the other effect. Yeah. Anyways, all of its effects are like hard once per turn. Anyways, so once per battle during damage calculation, it's like only once per turn effect. Oh wait, its effect on summon isn't once per turn either. That's kind of hilarious, but I don't see anybody playing more than one of this. But I digress. Anyway, so once per battle during damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, as a quick effect, you can have the attack of that opponent's monster during that damage calculation only. So that's once per battle, and it's not a once per turn effect. So if your opponent keeps trying to run into it, they gotta have something with more than double 2300, so 4600 attack to be able to run over Water Leviathan, which is hilarious. I mean, how many things out there actually have like 4600 or more attack power? Like that means this thing can run over Blue Eyes Ultimate and like just kind of laugh at it. I just love that. I mean, I know that like pretty much everything laughs at Blue Eyes Ultimate nowadays, but I just find it hilarious. And yeah, this card is just an overall really good card for what the deck wants to do. That being said, it's a ritual, and as such, it has the issues of a ritual monster. And yeah, it's if you're going for a like competitive build of Ignister, most builds I see don't bother with Water Leviathan. And I mean, personally, I love the card. It's a great ritual monster overall. The issue is that, like, it's so heavily focused on attack attack and battling and all that stuff, and that it just doesn't end up being that useful. Heck, I've seen more builds that play it just purely to discard it or get it in the graveyard to pump up the big Link 6 or Link 5 even higher, so it's just something that, like, really comes down to player preference. If you really like it, like I do, it's a definite one of. If you don't like it, like you don't like rituals or something, yeah, it's an easy drop. So it's down to what you personally prefer. Moving on, we got the Fusion Earth Golem at Ignister. He's a level 7 as well. Cyberse monster. Cyberse monster, fusion effect, 2300 attack, 2000 defense. Needs a Cyberse monster plus a Link monster to go into. Super Poly! That's all I really gotta say about that. This thing is an easy Super Poly target, and it's like made for Super Poly too, because its first line attack says, after this card is fusion summoned, you take no battle damage no battle or effect damage for the rest of this turn. Yeah, this card was made with Super Poly in mind, and it gets even funnier when you consider that the fusion spell is a Pseudo Super Poly, so yeah, this thing is... This was made for Super Poly. If this card attacks a monster that was spell summoned from the extract, this card gains attack equal to its original attack during the damage step only. It doubles its attack power. Why doesn't it just say that? When this card is destroyed by battle, you can target one Cyberse monster in your graveyard, except a copy of himself. Special summon it. You can only use each effect of Earth Golem at Ignister once per turn. So, this thing is an overall pretty good fusion monster. First up, again, since you're mainly going to be using Super Poly to fusion summon into it, or I guess I Love Fusion, whichever one. I mean, you're going to play I Love Fusion anyways, but Super Poly is like the better, preferred one. It just chum blocks you. Your opponent can't kill you that turn, and that's like freaking Azathoth's effect, where it just does it whenever it comes out. It doesn't activate, so therefore you don't have to worry about it getting negated or something, because it just happens on summon. And then the attack buff whenever it attacks an opponent's extract monster. I know, like, people are like, oh, that's just stupid. What does that matter? And I'm like, well, what is your opponent gonna have on their field? Unless you're dueling against Guru Control or something that doesn't go in the extract, like, ever, that effect is almost always gonna be alive. What isn't a good thing is that only triggers. It only triggers if it's the attacking monster. Okay, whereas Water of Life will trigger anytime a battle happens between it and an opponent's monster. Earth Golem only triggers when it's the attacker, and I'm not the biggest fan of that, because that makes it that much harder, well, that much easier for your opponent to run it over. Now, that being said, your opponent's supposed to run it over, because if it's killed by battle, you can bring back a dude from your graveyard, which is cool. I love that effect, because, hey, floating's awesome. You know, I'm not going to complain about a floater. What I am going to complain about is the fact that it doesn't trigger on being destroyed by a card effect either. Okay, don't get me wrong. Destruction on battle, nice. Okay, I mean, destruction by battle to float, nice. It's not going to be nice is that your opponent's going to probably read it. I mean, let's be honest, we're Yu-Gi-Oh players, we don't read cards. We're going to probably read it. Your opponent's probably going to see that that it has a destruction by battle effect. And then they're going to go, okay, I'm going to pop it with, I don't know, Nightmare Cerberus. Or I'm going to spin it back with Castel if people still play Castel. Do people still play Castel? I haven't seen Castel played in like 5 years. Why am I saying that? Anyway, so yeah, this card is good, and you mainly play it because of the fusion spells being the better thing of it. So yeah, I just wish that the deck had another fusion, because like Earth Golem's good for whenever you Super Poly with it, but I'd really like a better monster for going first or something. Like, come on, Konami, give us another fusion for this. On that note, give us another ritual. Heck, give us one more of everything for this archetype. I want to see this archetype get more support. Moving on. When Pegasus at Ignister. I don't know why, but this thing reminds me a lot of the Earthbound synchro from the anime. It just does for some reason. But anyways, it's a level 7 Wind Cyberse synchro monster. 2300 attack, 1500 defense. Oh, why does it have 500 less defense? I thought they all had 2000. No, it and Light Dragon have both 1500. That's weird. I don't know what's up with that. Anyways, he needs a tuner plus a non-tuner. So super generic, which is really good, especially whenever you compare, especially whenever you look at its effect. Like, holy crap, this thing is good. It's a 2300 non-tuner and a tuner. During your main phase, You can destroy spell and trap cards your opponent controls up to the number of Agnisters you control. Just blanket pop as many as you want, just once a turn, like equal to the number of Agnisters you control. That is wonderful. This is one of the reasons why this deck is made to go second, because it has Wind Pegasus and Light Dragon to just decimate your opponent's boards to be able to open up for an OTK. So Wind Pegasus being able to clear out your opponent's back row, even though back row is not really something you have to worry about nowadays, thanks to traps just not being relevant. This thing is really good just for that, just being able to get rid of back row, get rid of anything else that your opponent might have to disrupt you. On top of that, if this card is in your graveyard, and if another card is destroyed by an opponent's battle or by card effect, while this card is on the field or in the graveyard, you can banish this card, then target one card your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. So if your opponent kills something, whether it be by battle or card effect, you can banish it from your field or graveyard to shuffle a card your opponent controls back into the deck. That is mean. It's super good protection. And oh my god, this is a really just solid synchro monster. Consider not even just for Agnisters, but for other decks. Heck, if you play it in other decks, like let's say you play in, I don't know, Karakuri or something, and you summon it, sure, you only get to destroy one spell, but then you can, like, I don't know, sync it off for a Crystal Wing or something. That is really good in what it wants to do, because then after you sync it off for something bigger like Crystal Wing, it's sitting in your graveyard. Oh no, my opponent killed my Crystal Wing. A Wind Pegasus Agnister, banish, shuffle back into my opponent's monster, get rid of it. Awesome. It's a wonderful, good synchro monster. I've seen most people only play one, but personally, because I'm paranoid about freaking Called by the Grave, I like to play two. And yeah, it's down to you though. Like, honestly, 1 to 2 is what I would recommend of this deck for this card, because, well, I mean, typically speaking, if you go through the first one, you're pretty much good, because typically speaking, you're going into your big boss monster and you should be winning. But I digress. You can't be prepared for everything. So moving on, Light Dragon Agnister, the cover card of Ignition Assault, and he's only a super rare. Good going, Konami. Light Dragon Agnister. He's a Cyberse Xyz effect monster for rank 4. Yeah. Light, 2300 attack, 1500 defense. Needs 2 level 4 monsters to go into. Again, generic, just like Wind Pegasus. And just like Wind Pegasus, this is a really solid rank 4 for rank 4 decks. If a monster you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can detach 1 material from this card instead. You can only use each of the following effects of Light Dragon Agnister once per turn. You can detach 1 material from this card, destroy face-up monsters your opponent controls up to the number of Agnister monsters you control. When another Cyberse monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can spell summon 1 Link monster from your graveyard. Okay, it protects your dudes by detaching. It can destroy your opponent's monsters by detaching. And then if another Cyberse you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can just bring back a Link for free. Wow, this thing has 3 really good effects, like, just in general. This is a pretty solid rank 4, not even just for Agnisters, but for other decks in general. Like, I'm surprised I haven't seen it in more, like, rank 4 focused decks or anything. Like, I know, like, there are some people testing out Gagagas now, which I called it! So why is nobody playing Light Dragon? It's a pop, it's a protector. And then, hey, if you happen to summon another Cyberse, you can bring back a dude from your graveyard for free. That's just wonderful. This thing's good all around. It's also a good 1 to 2 of in the deck, just like Wind Pegasus. It's down to your personal opinion and what you prefer on your playstyle and all that fun stuff. Then we finally get to the links. We got Lingaribo. He's an angry Karibo. Cyberse Link effect monster. Link 1 points bottom left. A garbage arrow, but oh well. 1 level 4 lower Cyberse monster. So yeah, not an effect monster, just level 4 lower Cyberse, which is pretty easy to do in freaking Agnister. When your opponent activates a trap card, quick effect, you can tribute this card, negate edit card's effect, and if you do, banish it. If this card is in your graveyard, as a quick effect, you contribute 1 Agnister monster that was spell summoned from the action deck, spell summon this card. You can only use each effect of Lingaribo once per turn. So, this card is clearly supposed to be like an evil version or an angry version of Link Karibo, which is a nice little callback to the anime and how I was apparently a friend of Link Karibo. I have not watched that far into Reigns. I really need to, but I have read up on it, and it sounds really sad in the last, like, in the last like season. But I digress. Ygopro, you mainly play 2 to 3 of it due to 2 reasons. First and foremost, this deck is a go second OTK deck, and if your opponent has a crap ton of traps, Ygopro will take care of at least one of them, which is wonderful. That being said, there's a better reason why you do play him, and that is for the simple fact that he's a link that gets a dude out of your main monster zone, okay? Once we get to the field spell, you'll know why, but actually you probably already do if you're watching this regardless. But basically the field spell lets you special summon a dude from your hand, provided you control no monsters in the main monster zone. So, typically speaking, how the deck really wants to work is to normal summon like Achachi or Pickery, get your certs, link into Ygopro, activate the field spell, special summon a dude, and then just pop off from there. And that's really how the deck is intended to kind of work with that. So, yeah, that's the intention of it, and how it works and everything, and how this kind of requires Ygopro. Depending on your build, you do need to play at least 2 of them, because he gets your dudes out of your main monster zone, which is very, very important. But, I digress. He's got a bad special summoning effect from the graveyard. Okay, distributing one of your Agnisters to just plop it back onto your field, provided it was an Agnister that was summoned from the extract. Not good. I don't like it. Why? Okay, with the exception of the Pegasus and kind of sort of the other Link 3. None of them really have a purpose being in the graveyard, so there's no reason to do that. I mean, if I want to link off, or if I want to get rid of them into the graveyard, I'd prefer to link off of them into Arrival or freaking Firewall Dark Fluid. So, I'm not the biggest fan of Ygopro's special summoning effect from the graveyard, but I can't deny that he's just too good of a card for the deck to play. So, depending on your build, depending on the format, and depending on how you want to play the deck, 2 to 3 is kind of needed. You can get away with 2 very easily, though. So, yeah. Moving on, we got the worst of the 2 Link 3s. Fire Phoenix at Ignister. He's a Link 3 that points left, right, and bottom. Needs 2 or more Cyberse monsters to go into. And it has 2300 attack. During damage calculation, if this card attacks, you can inflict damage to your opponents equal to this card's attack. And if you do, your opponent takes no battle damage from that battle. If this card is destroyed by card effect, you can destroy 1 monster your opponent controls. During the next standby phase, after this Link Summon card was destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. You can only use each effect of Fire Phoenix Agnister once per turn. So, now, this is a really interesting card overall. First and foremost, obviously, if he battles, or rather, I should say if he attacks, you get to just burn your opponent for 2300, and then ideally you're going to want to drop Tie Strike to do another 2300 and protect Fire Phoenix from getting destroyed. That being said, this has a pretty decent summoning effect as well, where if he gets killed by a card effect, he brings himself back, and, if he gets killed by a card effect, you get to, bring himself back, but also you get to pop something. It's an overall pretty good card, and because of the recyclability of the archetype, you don't need to play more than 1 of this card, especially since he can recycle himself, and he is the worst of the, extract monsters, I would say, in terms of, what he does for the deck. He doesn't, actually progress the archetype that much, in what it wants to do. In fact, I only have ever maybe summoned him twice in this archetype, playtesting it, and even then it's only because I had Tie Strike and I could go for very easy burn damage, and that's kind of what I was talking about, where this deck can do very easy burn damage with Fire Phoenix, Tie Strike, and Ygopro, but again, you don't want to play Ygopro, so Fire Phoenix makes a good one of if you want to play him. I've seen a lot of people not even bother with him, so it's really down to what you want to do, because this thing is a pretty beefy chum blocker. Oh, you killed it, okay. I get to pop a dude, and then I get to bring him back during the next turn, which is nice. And he doesn't banish himself either, so you can recur him easy with Water of Life and Doshin, so that's pretty nice too. Moving on, we got the good one. Dark Templar at Ignister, the evil Deco Talker. Cyberse Link Effect Monster, 2300 attack, Link 3, points bottom left, bottom right, and needs 3 monsters with different names to go into. Annoyingly needs exactly 3 monsters to go into. You can't choose them out with a Link 2 and another monster, but hey, whatever. The deck is kind of made to be able to summon them easy. So, If a monster is spell summoned to a zone, discard points to. Even during the damage step, you can spell summon as many level 4 or lower Agnisters from your graveyard as possible to your zone's discard points to, but their effects are negated. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon one Cyberse monster from your graveyard. You can only use each effect of Dark Templar Agnister once per turn. So this thing, if another dude is summoned to its zone, you get to bring back as many monsters as possible from your graveyard that's level 4 or lower Agnisters into its zones below it, but have their effects negated. And then if it kills a monster, you get to summon a dude from your graveyard. Any Cyberse. This thing is flat out bonkers, okay? This is your main goal for getting the deck rolling, because making Dark Templar enables you to make all of your other monsters incredibly easy, okay? Just summoning out Hiyari or Doshin to his zones, and then getting 2 more dudes from the graveyard to easily make Light Dragon or win Pegasus. Heck, typically speaking, how it usually works is that you summon a dude, a Dark Templar effect, bring back 2 more, make Pegasus effect a Buru, bring back a dude, make freaking Light Dragon, and then it just steamrolls from there. Excuse me. This card is what makes the deck work. And it just is so overpowering with its special summoning effect that I can totally get why Konami put the hard once per turn on both. It doesn't matter. I don't know why I was saying that. This card is amazing. It really is. I just get hyped up, and this card is just awesome. Okay? This is what makes the deck work functionally, because it just makes everything else so easy to special summon. Okay? Before Master Rule Revision, you would typically summon 2 dudes below them in the bottom left. In the bottom and bottom right. Depending on wherever, what zones you're pointing to. And then you have Fire Phoenix in one of the corners to be able to open up another zone for Earth Golem or whoever. And it just makes it work so well. It just works. Bonus points if you've seen the Chalk Eaters funny video making fun of Todd Howard. But anyways, this thing is a definite 2 of. You don't want to play 3 because the deck is able to recycle its links so easily. And on top of that, if you need a 3rd one in this archetype, you're kind of screwed. But 2 works just fine. I've even seen people play 1 of them. Personally, again, I'm paranoid about him getting banished or something. This deck has no way of getting back its banished dudes. So play 2. That's my personal thing. But you can get away with 1 if you really need to, because typically speaking, after you make Dark Templar and after you make the other dudes to just decimate your opponent's boards, you're making the Arrival Cyberse Agnister. This is a Link 6. The only Link 6 in the game. With top, left, right, bottom left, bottom right, and bottom arrows. He's a Dark Cyberse Link effect monster. 3 or more monsters with different attributes to go into. You can only control 1, the Arrival Cyberse Agnister. The original attack of this card becomes 1,000 times the number of Link materials used for its Link summon, unaffected by other card effects. Once per turn, you can target one other monster on the field, destroy it, and if you do, special summon 1 Agnister token, Cyberse Dark, level 1, attack 0, defense 0 to your zone, discard points 2. This is your end game, along with 1 other monster that's not in the archetype, but we'll get to him whenever we get to just generic support. This is an amazing boss monster, okay? He's unaffected by everything, which means your opponent basically either has to get a stupid high attack power monster, which this thing can cap out at 6,000, okay? Now, granted, are you ever actually going to do that? If you really, really want to, you can. The deck can feasibly do it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I typically use good old Dark Templar with 3 other dudes to make him be a 4K beat stick, because then your opponent can't crash him in with something like a Blue Eyes or Boral Sword or something, and he's a 4K beat stick. Okay, this thing just sits there and laughs as your opponent can't get over it. And being 4K plus very easily, this thing is a very easy win condition for a lot of times, okay? Unless your opponent's maining Kaiju or has a way to stop you from summoning it, you're pretty much going to win if you get this guy out, because your opponent just won't be able to get him over. Granted, of course, there are other ways to kind of get around them. Like, heck, if you attack it with Boral Sword into something else, and then attack into a rival Cyberse after he's pumped up his attack power, and your opponent can possibly run over it. That's why I typically try to go for the 4K, because it's a lot harder for your opponent to run over. But I digress. This thing is an awesome boss monster. You only need one, because typically speaking, that's all you need to win. And again, you can easily recycle him back into the extra if your opponent does somehow kill him. Moving on to the spells and traps. We got Ignister Island. Ah, yeah, it is a level 4 lower. That's what I thought. This is the field spell. And where we get to the puns. Oh, the puns and all of the spells and traps. Oh my god, Konami and your love for puns. Anyways, it's a field spell. If you control monsters in your main monster zone, you can spell summon one level 4 or lower Ignister monster from your hand, but for the rest of this turn, you cannot spell summon monsters with the same original attribute by the effect of Ignister Island. Also, you cannot spell summon monsters except for Cyberse monsters, even if this card leaves the field. If this card is in your graveyard, you can banish one Ignister monster from your graveyard, set this card. You can only use each effect of Ignister Island once per turn. So right off the bat, this is an amazing card. Theoretically, you can potentially summon up to 6 monsters off of its effect. But you rarely ever get more than 2, maybe 3 monsters off of its effect, depending on how many links you climb up into and all that. So, typically speaking, you're going to get 2 to 3 monsters off of this card, out of your hand, onto the field, and you're going to get to just plus like crazy, because you're going to be hopefully summoning Achachi, Pikiri, Doyon, and all that to be able to recur stuff, search, and all that fun stuff. On top of that, this card can recur itself, and because of that, until we got some recent support, you typically only would play 1, because, well, that's all you need. Granted, again, with Cosmic Cyclone being in the format and getting this card banished all the time, you are encouraged to play 2, because it is rather important to the archetype and getting it rolling, so 1 to 2 is typically best. You don't need more than that. Moving on, we got Eye Contact. This is one of the cards that makes it to where you actually do want to play more than 2, especially. If Ignister Island is in your field zone, reveal one Ignister Island in your hand, place it on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, draw 3 cards. You can only activate 1 Eye Contact per turn. So, yeah. This card basically says, oh, you need to play multiple Ignister Islands, but there's no point in having more than 1 on the field. Okay, put it on the bottom of your deck, draw 3. Lets you plus, because you get rid of the Ignister Island, you lose the contact, and then you get 3 cards. So you basically plus 1. This card is an amazing card for the archetype. That being said, though, whether or not you play it really comes down to whether or not you're playing multiple islands, and on top of that, it's not like the first card you're going to be searching for off a Pikiri. Most of the time you're going to be searching for like Idol Reborn or Tie Strike or something else, anything else. That being said, it is another good card to play if you are playing multiple island, and it just is a bit situational to activate. Like, you got to control an island, and you got to have an island in your hand. It just isn't particularly great. But, however, because it's a potential +1, it's an iffy. I'd say definitely if you're considering it, play 1. Don't need any more than that. But, however, hey, he doesn't like to draw 3 cards. I've mentioned it a lot, but for finally here, Idol Reborn. It's a quick play spell card. Target 1 Ignister monster in your graveyard, spell shall summon it. Also, you cannot spell some monsters for the rest of this turn after this card resolves, except Cyberse monsters. When an attack is declared involving 2 monsters, you can banish this card from your graveyard and 1 card from your hand and target one of your eye spell or trap cards that is banished or in your graveyard, except Idol Reborn. Add that card to your hand. You can only use each effective Idol Reborn once per turn. This card is mainly used to recur your island if it does get banished, or getting back your contact, or anything else. Mainly, though, it's intended to kind of be used as a tie strike, but like some people don't even bother with tie strike, so this effect generally doesn't trigger that often, depending on what build you're playing and how many of the spell trap cards you're playing. That being said, though, you still play 3 because this is a freaking quick play monster reborn, okay? Just imagine this, okay? You activate 1 during your turn, bring back an Achachi, get a search, continue on with your turn, okay? Now, let's say you didn't get a chance to make into, I don't know, the Arrival. So now you're going to set another copy of Idol, switch this over to your opponent's turn. You've already used good old Dark Templar's effect during your turn, and now it switches over to your opponent's turn. You flip over Idol Reborn, spell summoning a dude from your graveyard under your Dark Templar, and then you get 2 more monsters for free, because that is awesome. It's a great card overall. Seriously, you mainly play 3 for the simple fact that it's a quick play monster reborn, in that, well, in any deck would beg for a card like this. Moving on, we got Tie Strike. This is a debatable card that people seem to really argue about whether or not it's worth playing. Personally, I love it to death. It's a quick play spell card. During damage calculation, if your monster battles an opponent's monster, your battling monster's attack becomes that opponent's monster attack. Also, during damage calculation only, during that damage calculation only, this card is worded really weird. Also, the controller of any monster destroyed at battle takes damage equal to its original attack at the end of the damage step. If your Ignister monster would be destroyed by battle, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So, how this is intended to be used is with any of your Ignisters, but it's really good if I can use it with Fire Phoenix, because then you get Fire Phoenix's effect to also burn. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to attack one of your dudes, one of your opponent's dudes, or your opponent's going to attack into one of your dudes, and then you're going to flip over a Tie Strike. Both your monsters become the attack of your opponent's monster. And then you're going to use Tie Strike's effect in the graveyard to prevent your monster from being killed, and your opponent's going to take a crap ton of burn damage. It's a wonderfully mean card that basically makes it to where your opponent is forced into a tie, but you can cheese around it with its own effect in graveyard. It's because of this and the fact that you typically recur it off of Idol Reborn that you only really need 2 of it. It's such a good card. I love it. I know, again, like, a lot of people argue that it's not a good card because it's a battle trap, basically, but it's a quick play spell, so you can do it whenever. I love it. It's such a fun card, and it really fits with the theme of the archetype, even though it's burn for some reason, but it's just such a really goofy, fun, good card that makes it where you can get over stuff that you normally can't get over. Like, okay, this deck basically loses to Winda, so what you typically have to do, if you're not playing Tie Strike, you're kind of screwed. But if you are playing Tie Strike, it can be as simple as summoning a Peakery, using Peakery effect to search out Tie Strike, and then running into that Winda, and then laughing as your opponent is like, what the hell is happening? Because that is how you get around Winda in this deck, because Winda screws this deck so much. It really does. Moving on, we got the Ritual spell. It's a plain old Ritual spell that also lets you use Ignisters in your graveyard if you control Link. It's a pretty good card overall, but, for only having the Ritual monster that we only have one of, its playability is completely dependent on how many of the Ritual you're playing. Then we got Eye of Fusion. This card is a straight up just standard fusion spell for Cyberse monsters. But however, if you control an Ignister, so if you use your Ignister monster as fusion material, you can also use a link your opponent controls as material. Again, I kind of mentioned it, it's kind of like a dumbed down Super Poly, so, like, it's not a quick play. If it was a quick play, oh my god, I'd be playing 2 to 3 of this card, but it's not, so you're playing one of it most of the time just to be able to search it off a Doshin, but I've seen some people not even bother with it because reasons, so, and I can see why, it's just literally a dumbed down Super Poly, but, hey, getting to fusion summon any Cyberse fusion monster, that can be more than just, Earth Golem. You can make, I forget what it's called, but that Chimera that's a level 5 that's really actually not half bad. If you could go for Clock Dragon if you wanted to. I don't know why I'd play Clock Wyvern in this deck, but hey, if you wanted to, you could go for it. That being said, again, it's just it's polymerization that has a gimmick. Play one of it if you want. Then we got, oh god, Eyeshadow. Okay. This is a continuous trap. Activate this card by targeting one Ignister monster you control. That monster gains 800 attack. Also, all monsters your opponent controls must attack that monster you control, if able. If this face-up card in its owner's monster zone, if this face-up card in its owner's spell and trap card zone has left the field because of an opponent's card effect and is now in the graveyard or banished, very specific, draw 1 card. It's not worth it. Don't play it. It's if this card was like an equip spell, maybe, but not as a trap. I get it. It's supposed to make it to where like you can target your Dark Templar. Your opponent has to attack your Dark Templar now. He becomes 3100, something like that. And, now your opponent has to attack it. Like, you activate it in response to your opponent attacking it or another dude, and then your opponent has to attack the Dark Templar, and your opponent now has to kill their own monster by running into the Dark Templar, and then that will trigger Dark Templar's effect to bring back a dude from graveyard, and then if your opponent wants to get rid of Eyeshadow, you get to draw a card. I get what Konami was doing with this card, but it is just not worth it. It really isn't, like, at all. It's a neat idea, but it's just not worth it one bit. So, to that extent, Don't play it, please. Do not. Moving on, we got IQ, a card that would have been cool coming out like 5 months ago. IQ, it's a continuous trap card. Activate only if you control an Agnister monster. Once per turn, during your standby phase, tribute 1 link monster or destroy this card. Each player can only link summon a monster once per turn while this card is face up on the field. So, in theory, this card is not half bad. You know, getting to lock out your opponent's link monsters and also your stuff. You know, flipping this over while you have the Arrival out and like 2 other monsters to tribute for its effect to keep it out on the field. And that's not half bad. It's basically a window for link monsters. Except, guys, here's the thing. We just went into Master Rule Revision where links are basically irrelevant unless they're either archetypal links or they are just so good that you have to play them, okay? Before Master Rule Revision, everyone had to play a link monster if they wanted to be able to play their other favorite summoning mechanics. You know, the ones that are actually fun to play. So, the fact that this card just came out that too late makes it irrelevant. This card, it might see play in a future format where like a link monster like focused deck is just so abundant and overpowering for everything else. Like, God forbid, like maybe since Orcus might come back thanks to the new Gearsu monster, maybe consider playing it. But it's not worth playing for the most part. You got better cards to play in the deck. And then that brings us to the overall. This deck, again, I said it before, it is such a consistent and fun deck. Not even just like just looking at not even just its archetypal stuff, but the stuff that has access to outside of its archetype. Seriously, you got Lady Debug, you got Signet Mining, Signet Backdoor, you got Flame Buffalo, you got all these search and draw cards this deck has access to. Not to mention you also got like Signet Security, I think is what it's called, the continuous spell that lets you get another normal summon, Bouncer Lord, all these other cards that make this deck work just so much better than if you were playing Pure. Do not play Pure of this deck. I have tried. It does not work as well as it should, but if you're mixing it with other Cyber stuff like Debug, Bouncer Lord, Bufferlow, the continuous spell card that lets you get an extra normal summon, this deck becomes something special, and it is a lot of fun with a lot of OTK and potential and all that. It very much still lacks the negation stuff, even with like being able to make a crap ton of other Cybers, unless like you're able to like get an extra link with like Trigate Wizard and everything. You really don't have much negation even with the outside support. But like seriously, the outside support with the Cybers and everything is what makes this deck so good, and especially if you're going second, and you can make Dark Fluid, because Dark Fluid is the deck's secondary boss monster, and is really its main boss monster for the most part. Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid is very, very similar to the Arrival. He's a Link 5, has the exact same arrows, except because he's a Link 5, he's missing the bottom, and he has the almost exact same summoning mechanic. If he's Link summoned, you can place counters on him equal to number of different types of Cyberse monsters in your graveyard, Ritual Fusion, Synchronic Seas. This card gains 2500 attack for each counter on it during the battle phase only, and when your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you can remove 1 counter from this card and negate that activation. Also, if this effect was activated between this card's attack declaration and the end of the damage step, this card can make a second attack. This is a really, really, really good boss monster for the archetype, and is what you're mainly making. If you're going first, you're making the Arrival, because the Arrival is just a sit and laugh at you card, and it's a wonderful, wonderful beat stick. But if you're going second, you're mainly making Dark Fluid because he's a negate, and also he can just punch over so much. You can easily get this thing over 10,000 attack power very, very easily. I mean, it's 2,500 for each, and even if you don't play the Ritual, if you play the Fusion, Synchronic Seas, and get one of each in the graveyard, that's 7,500 more attack power on an already 3k beat stick. It's very easy to do. So this card is the true main boss monster archetype when you're going second, which is what the deck wants to do. So, with all that being said, Agnister is a deck that's almost there. If this card gets a bit more support, mainly new extract monsters that like are much more impactful than what the ones from the anime were. Like, let's say we get another Fusion, another Synchro, another Xyz, another like, you know, I don't know, Ritual as well, maybe even, that are better that give the deck more options and are able to better clear the board to be able to go for an OTK, I could see this deck being something really, truly special in terms of being just a really good rogue or even tier deck. It's almost there. And I really hope Konami doesn't just forget about it and every other deck from Reigns until like 5 years from now when it's suddenly getting legacy support. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Thank you all for watching. Have a great day. It's your birthday. Happy birthday. See y'all later. Rate, comment, and subscribe. And peace out. Thank you all for watching the video. Have a great day. It's your birthday. Happy birthday. Rate, comment, and subscribe. And see y'all later.